"I can't live without a man," said the Apache girl. "The rancher let her stay." Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more epic Wild West stories. The Arizona desert lay quiet under the fading amber light as Luke Harland rode, his horse back toward his ranch. Dust swirls rising beneath the hooves. He expected another lonely evening, warm stew, a crackling fire, and the same silence that had followed him for years. But that silence shattered the moment he spotted a small, wavering figure near the corral fence. His hand instinctively went to his rifle, but as he approached, he saw it was no outlaw, no warrior, no threat. It was a girl, barefoot, thin, covered in desert dust, her long black hair tangled like wind-blown horse mane. She stood there, trembling, but her eyes held a fierce will that didn't match her exhaustion. She tried to raise her hands, but even that seemed heavy for her weak body. Luke stopped a few feet away, his voice firm yet cautious as he asked who she was. She struggled to speak, her English broken but clear enough to show desperation. "No fight, no weapon. I just need place." He scanned the horizon for signs of an ambush. Apache warriors were known to use decoys, but there was no one, only her. Her dress was torn, her bare feet cut by rock and thorns, and the bruises on her arms told a story she hadn't yet spoken. When he asked why she had come, she looked back at the mountains behind her, the fading path of whatever she had escaped. Her voice cracked soft as dying wind. "I can't live without a man," she whispered, and just as the words left her mouth, her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the dirt. Luke caught her before she hit the ground, feeling the heat of her fever and the trembling of her body. He carried her into his cabin, laying her gently on the bed that once belonged to his wife. As he cleaned her wounds, she opened her eyes briefly and murmured a name, Naya. Later, when she could finally speak, she revealed she was the daughter of Chief Taroka, forced to flee from a fate she couldn't accept. Luke listened in silence, unsure of how deeply he wanted to involve himself, but unable to ignore the raw fear in her voice. Night slowly covered the ranch with heavy darkness, yet something new had entered Luke's life, something fragile, dangerous, and impossibly human. He realized the simple act of letting her inside his home had already tied their fates. Together, and whatever storm she carried with her was now approaching his doorstep. Naya's presence changed the rhythm of the ranch within hours, and Luke felt it even though he refused to admit it to himself. She moved quietly, watching everything with wary eyes, flinching at sudden sounds as if expecting someone to burst through the door at any moment. Her story finally came out slowly, piece by painful piece. While she sat wrapped in a wool blanket near the fire, she had run from her own people, not because she wished to betray them, but because they had chosen a future for her that felt like a death sentence. The warrior she was meant to marry was feared, even among the Apache, a man known for cruelty behind the mask of honor. When she refused him, her tribe saw it as rebellion, as shame brought upon her father, and the warrior vowed to drag her back by force. That was why she fled through the desert alone, chased by her own blood. Luke listened with the heavy stillness of a man who had lived too long without hearing another person's pain. He understood loss, fear, the ache of unwanted destiny more than she knew. He warned her that her people would come searching, and if they found her on his land, they would assume he had taken her. But Naya simply shook her head, her voice soft but full of a strange certainty. "Let them think. You save me. You give water. You man who has heart." Her trust made Luke uneasy. Yet something inside him warmed, in a way he had forgotten he could feel. Days passed, and Naya tried to repay him in small ways. She cooked clumsy meals, mended tools with delicate fingers, hummed haunting Apache melodies while sweeping the porch. The cabin, once silent as a grave, now filled with the warmth of a presence Luke didn't realize he'd missed so deeply. Still, danger hung in the air like the scent of rain before a storm. Luke knew it was only a matter of time before her pursuers found her trail and found him. The warning came sooner than expected. At dawn, he heard distant hoofbeats rolling across the valley like thunder. When he stepped outside, he saw shadows descending the ridge, warriors on horseback, at least 20 of them. Luke's blood turned cold. He readied his rifle, but Naya grabbed his arm, fear twisting her face. "No kill," she pleaded. But the warriors weren't coming to talk. The desert wind carried the echo of anger, and Luke understood the truth. Hiding her was no longer an act of kindness. It was a declaration of war, one he hadn't chosen, but one he now had no way to escape. The riders fanned out across the open plain, their silhouettes sharp against the rising sun as they formed a tightening circle around the ranch. Luke stood on the porch with his rifle held steady, every muscle tense, his eyes scanning for the leader. Dust rolled behind the horses like smoke from a coming wildfire. Then one warrior urged his horse forward, a scarred, broad-shouldered man with eyes cold as obsidian. He was Kohana, the warrior Naya had spoken of, the man chosen for her against her will. His glare moved from Luke to Naya, who stood trembling behind him, then back to the rifle in Luke's hands. His voice boomed across the open land, thick with fury. "Return Chief Toroka's daughter. The white man has no right to her." Luke didn't step back. "She stays here because she wants to," he answered, trying to keep his voice level, though he knew his words added fuel to an already burning fire. The warriors growled, shifting on their horses, their hands gripping spears and bows. Naya stepped beside Luke, her small hand wrapping around his arm as she spoke louder than he'd ever heard her. "I choose this place. I choose this man." Her voice cracked, but her courage didn't. For a heartbeat, there was silence, the kind that comes right before a storm breaks. Then Kohana roared an order, and chaos erupted. Arrows sliced through the air like dark birds. Bullets cracked against the dirt and wood. Luke fired back, forcing himself to breathe steadily. Each shot meant to push the warriors back rather than kill. Naya crouched near the doorway, quickly loading bullets with shaking hands. Despite her fear, she kept passing him ammunition, whispering, "Fight for me. I fight for you," her words trembling with determination. The battle raged around the ranch, dust clouds rising, horses screeching, arrows thudding into posts. When Luke noticed smoke billowing from the direction of the barn, his stomach twisted. They were trying to burn his livelihood, his horses, his supplies, his last link to a life built with hard hands. Without hesitation, he dashed into the gunfire, aiming to save what he could. Naya, heart-pounding, grabbed the oversized revolver. Luke had left for her and fired clumsy, warning shots that scattered a few warriors. Long enough for Luke to drive the horses into safety. By sunset, the warriors finally pulled back, gathering on a distant ridge. Their silhouettes looked larger, angrier, the promise of another attack thick in the twilight air. Luke knew this was far from over. The next assault would be stronger, more violent, and likely led by the chief himself. Naya stood beside him, breathless and bruised, but eyes full of the same fire she'd shown from the moment she arrived. She wasn't running anymore, and Luke realized with a heavy, quiet certainty that he wasn't fighting out of obligation. He was fighting because losing her now would feel like losing the last living part of himself. The sun had barely begun painting the horizon with pale streaks of gold when Luke spotted movement far beyond the ridge. This time, it wasn't a small group of warriors circling like wolves. It was a formation, disciplined, silent, filled with authority. At the center rode a tall figure draped in wolf hide, his hair braided with beads of leadership. Chief Toroka himself had come. Naya stiffened the moment she saw him, her breath catching as memories and fear collided inside her. Luke felt her hand trembling in his, but she didn't step back. Not this time. She walked forward slowly, every step heavy with the knowledge that this moment would decide her fate. Chief Toroka dismounted with a grace that commanded silence. He was older than Naya had described, yet the strength in his eyes was undeniable. Warriors bowed their heads as he passed them, but he looked only at his daughter. "You ran from your people," he said, his voice deep, layered with disappointment and a father's wounded pride. "You brought shame upon your blood. You refused the man chosen to protect you." Naya swallowed hard, her voice shaking but honest. "I ran because he is not a man who protects. He is a man who breaks. I want a life where I am seen, not owned." Toroka's eyes flicked to Luke, studying the quiet rancher who had dared to defy a tribe for one runaway girl. "And you," he said, stepping closer, "would you take responsibility for her? Shelter her? Fight my warriors for her? Luke didn't hesitate. I didn't choose this fight, Chief, but she came here scared and alone. I couldn't turn her away, and I won't let anyone take her by force, not even you. There was no bravado in Luke's voice, only truth. Pure, steady, undeniable. The chief remained silent for a long, tense moment, the desert wind brushing past like a whisper of spirits. His warriors waited restless, expecting his command to reclaim Naya. Kohana glared at Luke with venom, hand twitching near his knife. But Taroka finally breathed out slowly and lifted a hand, a gesture of peace, not attack. The warriors froze. My daughter has always carried fire inside her, Taroka said, his voice softer now. More than her brothers, more than my warriors. If she chooses this man, then I will not extinguish her flame, Kohana protested angrily. But the chief silenced him with a single glance. Naya's knees almost buckled from relief, tears flooding her eyes as she stepped closer to Luke. She whispered the words that had set everything into motion. This time with full certainty, I can't live without a man, but not just any man, you. The warriors slowly turned their horses. Taroka gave Luke one last nod of cautious respect before riding away into the rising sun. As the dust settled, quiet fell over the ranch, not the lonely quiet Luke once knew, but a peaceful stillness filled with possibility. Naya leaned into him, trembling with relief, and Luke wrapped an arm around her gently. The storm had passed.